Here we go, here we go, here we go. As I promised yesterday, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. officially ended his race for president and threw his support behind Donald Trump. There's a lot of untreated mental illness going on here. During his press conference, Kennedy announced that Trump offered him a role in a future Trump administration. But later, while speaking in Las Vegas, Trump said, "I'm only considering a cabinet position for Robert F. Kennedy Jr. I haven't decided yet." So it didn't even take 3 hours for Trump to totally screw over Bobby Kennedy Jr. Kennedy later joined Trump on stage at a rally in Glendale, Arizona. Bobby briefly took the stage and asked the crowd, "Don't you want to vote for Donald Trump? Don't you want to get the chemicals out of our food?" That's what Robert F. Kennedy Jr. said to a crowd of Trump supporters. Don't you want the chemicals out of your food? Because, if there's one overwhelming characteristic of a Trump supporter, it's concern for what they jam down their mouths. Trump then promised the crowd that when elected, he will create a presidential commission looking into presidential assassinations and will release all the documents relating to the killing of Bobby's uncle, President Kennedy, which came as a total surprise to most of the people in the audience who have already been convinced President Kennedy and his son are still alive, waiting on orders from Donald Trump to drive the pedophiles from our government. They really do believe this. Kennedy, in announcing his withdrawal, asked that his name be removed from the ballots in 10 key battleground states, especially Pennsylvania, because he said he doesn't want to be a spoiler. Kennedy then appealed to Trump supporters by calling America's system for electing presidents dishonest. Politico reports this morning that a breakdown of Robert Kennedy's campaign financials revealed that donors who gave to Robert F. Kennedy Jr. this year were more likely to also donate to Donald Trump than Joe Biden. He was always a Trump plant. As Kennedy sinks in the polls, his impact on the election was diminishing. And it is generally believed his endorsement to Trump will have at best a modest impact come November. After Bobby endorsed Trump, 5 of Bobby's brothers and sisters condemned the move, issuing an official statement that read, quote, "We want an America filled with hope and bound together by a shared vision of a brighter future, a future defined by individual freedom, economic promise, and national pride. We believe in Harris and Walls. Our brother Bobby's decision to endorse Donald Trump today is a betrayal of the values that our father and our family hold most dear. It is a sad ending to a sad story," unquote. That is the official statement from Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s family. Untreated mental illness. That's the tableau you're looking at right now. Donald Trump shaking hands with Bobby Kennedy Jr., untreated mental illness. This is the mop-up for August 24th, 2024. I'm David Feldman in New York City. Thank you for finding me. Please like this episode so I remain in your feed. If you haven't already subscribed to this channel, I urge you to do so. But the best way to ensure I remain in your feed is to like this episode. And, of course, hit the notification bell so you're always given a heads up when I've launched a new episode. Finally, if you really want to help me, if you're a fan of this show, please share this episode with your friends. That is the best way to help me out. Copy the link to this episode and paste it on a social media platform or in a text or in an email. There is only one reason this show has an audience, and it's because you, my listeners, and nobody else, you have been kind enough to share these episodes. I'm not an ex-sitcom star slumming it on the internet. I'm not part of some network. This is entirely grassroots Please share this episode. The only people helping me who are famous are Robert Smigel and Sam Seder. Sam Seder. Okay. Listeners to this show already know that control of the Senate comes down to Jon Tester keeping his seat in Montana. Again, if Tester loses, Republicans get control. Tester, of course, is in deep red Montana, with some polls now showing Trump beating Harris by nearly 20 points, which is why Jon Tester didn't show up at the Democratic convention this week. He's now portraying himself more as an independent who merely caucuses with the Democrats. He's kind of doing the Manchin route. Smart. Doesn't hold up legislation the way Manchin does. Tester's not an independent. He's a Democrat, but he can't win this thing campaigning as a Democrat. And yesterday, Tester refused to endorse Harris for president. Senator Tester said, quote, "I'm not going to endorse for the presidential. And I will tell you why. Because two reasons. Number one, I'm focused on my race. And number two, folks want to nationalize this race. But this isn't about national politics. This is about Montana. It's about making sure we have a Montanan back in Washington, D.C., representing Montana values. And so that's why," unquote. Call Jon Tester's campaign headquarters. Ask what you can do to push him over the top. Election day is just 10 weeks away. A lot closer than any of us realize. According to the latest Nielsen ratings, and we will get more comprehensive numbers from them on Monday, but according to the latest Nielsen ratings, Kamala Harris's acceptance speech Thursday night was viewed by 22% more people than Donald Trump's acceptance speech back in July, and she didn't even have to survive an assassination attempt to get those numbers. Donald Trump believes cops should be allowed to take away people's guns. Well, not really, just the guns belonging to black people who live in Chicago. During an interview on Fox and Friends Thursday, Donald Trump said Chicago cops must be allowed to do their jobs. He said when he returns to the Oval Office, he's bringing back stop and frisk. If I'm not mistaken, stop and frisk is why he owes E. Jean Carroll $80 million. Talking about the crime problem in Chicago, Trump said cops know who the criminals are. And when cops are walking down the street and they see these criminals, they should be allowed, he said, to stop them and take away their guns. I wonder what Second Amendment activists have to say about Donald Trump insisting that Chicago police officers should be able to take away the guns of criminals on the street. Trump went on to say, quote, "You got to let the cops do their job. Stop and frisk, then take their guns away. You've got to do it because they have all these guns." That's what he said. And by the way, when he says they have all these guns, he means black people who live in Chicago. Now, Trump voters are stupid enough to believe a president can grant Chicago police officers the power to confiscate black people's guns. But remember, Trump said he's coming to take away your guns. That's what he said. All Harris and Biden ever wanted, all Walsh wants is an assault weapons ban. Trump Thursday said cops should be allowed to take away your guns. I hope the Democrats are taking that soundbite and using it against him. Donald Trump was down at the border on Thursday doing a photo op in Cochise County, Arizona. Now, look at this picture. Donald, you see that wall right behind you to your right? Imagine you're being in the middle of 4 of those walls. That should give you a pretty rough idea of what your 80s will be like after you flame out in November. You're going to be looking at 4. I don't know. Will he ever? He's going to lose. Will they send him to prison? I just don't see it. The show is much better with him on the outside than the inside. Anyway, Trump used the photo op at the border as an opportunity to accuse Kamala Harris of destroying the city of San Francisco. Trump said 15 years ago, San Francisco was the greatest city in the world. Then she destroyed it, which is odd because 15 years ago, Kamala Harris was the district attorney for San Francisco and Gavin Newsom was the mayor. Well, it's kind of hard for Trump to keep track of what happened 15 years ago because he still thinks it's 1860. Then, while campaigning in Las Vegas, Trump called Harris a copycat who stole my idea. It was my idea not to tax tips. She stole it. Trump then added, quote, she went from communism to capitalism in about 2 weeks. He's saying she's a communist. And he's also calling her a fascist. But see, he's so stupid and his voters are so stupid, they don't know it's impossible to be both a communist and a fascist. It's either one or the other. Then Trump said, quote, she's a flip-flopper. She's the greatest flip-flopper in history. You know, if you really want to see some major flip-flopping, right now I want everybody to close your eyes and imagine Donald Trump doing jumping jacks in the nude. Just picture that. That's some real flip-flop. And as of today, Harris is leading the national polling averages by 2 points. That shows it's still a tight race, but compared to where Biden was 5 weeks ago, the momentum is on Kamala Harris's side. And in a 10-week sprint until Election Day, presidential politics are Newtonian. Things in motion stay in motion unless acted upon by an unbalanced force. Well, Trump is certainly unbalanced, but he's out of ideas. There's nothing he can do to stop this juggernaut. It's not only bigger than Trump, it's bigger than Harris. If you watched her speech Thursday night, you know that politics is all about rising to the moment. Whatever Kamala Harris was before that convention speech, whatever she was before that, it's melted away, and she now reflects the hopes and desires of a brand new Democratic Party that, as she said, won't go back. In other words, we're not going back to Clinton and Obama catering to the big money donors. Well, maybe just a little. Okay, a lot. But there's a very big and loud progressive wing inside this Democratic Party, and it didn't exist 8 years ago. Trust me, we're not going back. She rose to the occasion Thursday, and she's going to continue to rise to the occasion as president as we push her further and further to the left. Let's go to the blue wall. Polling averages now show Harris leads Trump by 2 points in Wisconsin, 2 points in Michigan. In Pennsylvania, Harris and Trump, according to the latest polling averages, are in a statistical dead heat. That's awesome. 1 month ago, when Harris first entered the race, Trump was leading her by 4 points. In Pennsylvania, she's closing the gap. And in Arizona, where Trump campaigned on Friday, Harris and Trump, according to the latest polling averages, are tied in Arizona. 1 month ago, Trump was leading her by 8 percentage points in Arizona. This is an incredible bounce, something we've never seen before. It's a completely different election from what we had when Biden was still in the race, which is why much of Trump's speeches on the campaign trail are all about how unfair it is that Biden dropped out. It's so unfair. CNN reports that Trump-owned businesses are reaping huge financial rewards from the Republican Party as candidates, including Donald Trump, pay top dollar for the privilege of hosting high-end fundraisers at Trump properties like Mar-a-Lago. For example, Bernie Moreno, the Ohio Republican candidate running for Democrat Sherrod Brown's Senate seat, Bernie Moreno spent close to $100,000 for just 2 fundraisers at Mar-a-Lago, and that goes straight into Donald Trump's pocket. What do you get for that $100,000? Well, one of those fundraisers included Kimberly Gargoyle. That would be Don Jr.'s fiancée. That would be Kimberly Gargoyle. This is true. She told the Mar-a-Lago crowd that God has chosen Bernie Moreno to be the next senator from Ohio. That's what $100,000 gets you. Kimberly Gargoyle coming out and saying God wants the owner of a car dealership who's never held elective office before to serve the people of Ohio. That is an actual picture of Kimberly Gargoyle. Let me go full screen here. That's what she does when she performs at Mar-a-Lago. That's what Kimberly Gargoyle, the future Mrs. Donald Trump Jr., that's what she looks like. Okay. Actually, look at those hands. I made that because that's what I see when I watch her speak. CNN reports that the Republican Party, since 2016, has transferred at least $28 million to Donald Trump's businesses for use of the facilities. So far this year, Trump businesses have billed the RNC for more than $3 million that we know about. Let's not forget that his idiot daughter-in-law, Lara Trump, is co-chair of the RNC to make sure that a lot of money we don't know about and that the Republicans who donate don't know about ends up in her father-in-law's pocket. Well, with only 75 days to go until Trump starts insisting the election was stolen from him, the momentum continues to lurch dramatically away from Trump. A new High Point University survey of 1,053 registered voters in North Carolina now shows Harris leading in North Carolina by 1 point. North Carolina, with 16 electoral votes, can replace Wisconsin and Michigan in the blue wall, but it's still 3 votes shy of Pennsylvania's 19 electoral votes, so she still needs to pick up Pennsylvania. That same polling from High Point University of 1,053 registered voters in North Carolina shows that North Carolina Attorney General, Democrat Josh Stein, is leading Republican Lieutenant Governor Mark Robinson in the race for governor by 14 points. 14 percentage points. And that is the real story coming out of North Carolina this morning. While Biden was running for office, I talked about reverse coattails, the updraft, where down-ballot candidates were going to lift Biden up. But in North Carolina, we're seeing Harris's coattails lifting Josh Stein up, and Josh Stein's reverse coattails lifting Harris up. Josh Stein is leading, Democrat Josh Stein is leading in the race for governor by 14 points. Forget Harris leading Trump in the same poll in North Carolina by 2, okay? The number keeping Donald Trump up at night is 14. MAGA Republican Mark Robinson, the batshit crazy lieutenant governor of North Carolina, is down by 14 points in North Carolina. We are looking at not just a win for Harris in North Carolina, we are looking at a blowout. And don't forget, the Democratic governor of North Carolina, Roy Cooper, just forgave billions of dollars in medical debt through Medicaid. I should add that this High Point University poll showing Harris leading by 2 and Josh Stein leading in the governor's race by 14, in terms of scope, this poll is the most comprehensive poll we've seen coming out of North Carolina all year. It's the most accurate reading of what's actually going on down there, and it's looking worse and worse for Donald Trump. So if you're keeping score, go ahead and put North Carolina to bed. It's Harris country. The Associated Press reports that North Carolina starts sending out mail-in ballots on September 6. That means in 2 weeks, North Carolinians start voting, which means Harris winning North Carolina is about to become settled law, and that frees her to focus more on Pennsylvania, Florida, and dare I, shall I, Texas? Could it be? New polling out this morning from YouGov. That is an A+ polling unit. YouGov now shows Ted Cruz only leading his Democratic challenger, Congressman Colin Allred, by 2 percentage points. Colin Allred is a great candidate. This is the strongest candidate Ted Cruz ever ran against. Colin Allred, NFL player, civil rights attorney, progressive congressman. In that same poll, Trump is leading Harris in Texas by 5 points, which is the same number Trump beat Biden by in 2020. So, is Texas turning blue? As of this morning, absolutely not. Is Ted Cruz going to lose? Absolutely not, as of today. But early voting in Texas starts in late October. That means if Harris can nail down Pennsylvania and Arizona by the end of September, again, she already has North Carolina. If she can nail down Pennsylvania and Arizona by the end of September, then that gives her almost an entire month to take the fight to Texas and, of course, Florida. Now, you saw the Democratic convention. This current iteration of the Democratic Party, besides being the most progressive since LBJ, this current iteration of the Democratic Party now has the deepest bench of any party in American history. There is no bench deeper than this current Democratic Party. If you watched that convention, you witnessed the firepower that Harris and Walz have. And it's not just Bill and Hillary. It's not just Michelle and Barack. It's not just Jill Biden and Joe Biden. Jesus Christ, those 6 alone, these beloved Democrats alone, you can start sending to the swing states to soften up the ground for Kamala when she has time. Doug Emhoff is way more of a political asset than I ever imagined. And his parents, you want to talk Florida, Doug Emhoff's parents can deliver the Jews down in Florida who, because they're old and not too sharp, they still mistakenly believe Donald Trump is a friend of Israel. That's just the politicians. I mean, Jasmine Crockett, AOC. Then there's, Bruce Springsteen, Beyonce, Lil Jon. It is an understatement to say Trump is outgunned. I got something wrong. I heard on bad authority that Taylor Swift, well, everybody was saying Beyonce was going to close out the convention Thursday night. I was saying it was going to be Taylor Swift. I got it completely wrong. But at least I didn't say Beyonce, which everybody else got wrong. Well, like I said, this election is going to be over much quicker than we realize. A month from now, we'll be closing in on October. The Earth is spinning around the sun much faster than you realize. And for you Trump supporters who like to watch and troll me, for you Trump supporters, the sun is spinning around the Earth much faster than you realize. Election day, or at least voting, early voting, it's here. I mean, it's after Labor Day in some states. The Associated Press reports that on September 21st, I want to give you the lay of the land and what we have to expect. On September 21st, that's less than a month away, members of the military and American citizens living overseas start receiving their ballots. And that gives them exactly 45 days to vote, mail it in, get it postmarked. This is why the polling we're looking at immediately after Labor Day gives us such a clear idea of how this race is settling. So nobody else is talking about this because there's just too much to cover. But this is important. September is really important. Not October. It used to be October. Not anymore. Things have changed because of COVID. 4 years ago, we became more reliant on absentee ballots. Trump fought absentee ballots kicking and screaming. This is really important, and this is why September is going to be where the election takes place and not October. So Trump, if you remember back in 2020, fought absentee ballots. He wanted what is called the red mirage on election night. What is the red mirage? It is the illusion that Republicans have won, because traditionally absentee ballots are counted last. So, in the past, the tally that you saw on television didn't reflect all the absentee ballots, which at the time were traditionally cast by Democrats. That's how you get what is called the red mirage. And Trump knew about the red mirage because it allows you to control the narrative if you're claiming election fraud. James Baker, who was George W. Bush's consigliere down in Florida in 2020, captured the narrative by promoting the red mirage. He, stop the count, Bush is winning. Well, we haven't counted all the votes. So, with the red mirage in 2020, Trump claimed I was leading by hundreds of thousands of votes in Pennsylvania, and then suddenly I'm losing. Where did they find all those votes? Well, Democrats in Pennsylvania are more likely to vote by absentee ballot, which meant their votes were more likely to get counted last. But things have changed now. Trump is encouraging supporters to use absentee ballots. So this is an entirely different election now, with everybody using absentee ballots. This means, and this is why September is going to hit you like October used to hit you. For the first time in American history, races, especially presidential races in some key swing states, they are going to be settled days, in some cases weeks, before Election Day. That's what early voting is doing. In the past, now listen to me, this is really important, and nobody's talking about this, but this is what I'm girding your loins for September. In the past, we always waited for what was called the October surprise. In 2000, it was George W. Bush's DUI. In 1968, it was LBJ halting the bombing of North Vietnam, which almost put Humphrey over the top. LBJ stopped bombing, and in the final days, Humphrey almost beat Nixon because of that October surprise. But now, because of early voting, it will become the September surprise. We have to watch out for the September surprise. Now, nobody's talking about this. Trust me, whatever happens in October will be too late. September is going to get vicious. It's not just going to be a September surprise. September is going to, I'm calling it Bloody September. Be prepared. It's going to be Bloody September. Trump knows that if he cannot change the narrative by the end of September, this thing is over. It already is over. But in his mind, he won't realize it's over until October 1st. So enjoy your extended Labor Day holiday coming up, because you're coming back to a September bloodbath. Trump will have fewer than 30 days to throw everything he can at Kamala Harris and, of course, Tim Walz. And on October 1st, with early voting, it'll be kind of too late. The narrative will have been set in stone. So, the first presidential debate is scheduled for September 10th. This will be Donald Trump's last big opportunity to flip the script. This will be his last opportunity to define himself on a big stage. After that, it becomes a game of inches, state by state, doorbell by doorbell, and Trump cannot win that way. Trump only wins in the air, and he only won in the air in 2016 with press conferences, television appearances, and of course, headline-grabbing rallies. But those days are over. That was 2016. His act is tired. It's tiring and tired. There's nothing new. He's not doing anything new. The Associated Press says that on September 18th, a little more than a week after the presidential debate, Donald Trump will be in a Manhattan courtroom for his sentencing. Remember, he was found guilty on 34 counts, criminal counts, earlier this year in that hush money trial. Trump's lawyers are asking that he be sentenced after Election Day, and I suspect Judge Juan Merchan will oblige. But that story will dominate the news cycle for at least 2 crucial days in September. It's not good for Trump. Now, some maybe good news for Donald Trump. Special counsel Jack Smith has decided against staging, in the weeks leading up to Election Day, a mini trial in his Washington, D.C. election interference case against Donald Trump. You might remember, I know it's hard to keep track of all this, you might remember the Supreme Court ruled in June that former president, it was 2 months ago, it could have been a year ago, how quickly, I mean, it's just incredible. You might remember the Supreme Court ruled in June, right, 2 months, that former presidents enjoy immunity from prosecution for any crimes they may have committed while performing official acts as president. They sent the indictment back down to the lower court for the judge in that trial, Tanya Chutkin, to parse out which facets of the indictment involve Trump's unofficial role as president. He can only be tried for the crimes he committed that weren't official acts of president. Now, what we were expecting before Election Day was a mini trial where special counsel Jack Smith would present evidence before Judge Chutkin's courtroom demonstrating Trump's crimes were committed not while performing his official duties as president. Theoretically, this was expected to prove politically embarrassing for Donald Trump. But I think Trump benefits politically whenever he goes on trial. You might remember in May, when the Manhattan criminal trial was going on, Trump surged in the polls and brought in a record haul when it comes to campaign contributions. So, special counsel Jack Smith announced Friday he will wait to present his mini trial until after the election, when I'm sure he'll be tacking on brand new indictments to address how Trump responded to his impending defeat this November. I think there are going to be some new indictments after November 5th. I think Smith's decision, not political, but I do think his decision to postpone politically is a push. I don't think it helps Trump, but I don't think it hurts. I just think it's irrelevant at this point. However, politically problematic for Trump is what happens on September 6th. Remember, this election will be decided by women. And on September 6, Trump's lawyers begin the appeals process in the E. Jean Carroll trial, where two separate juries ruled Donald Trump must pay damages for sexually assaulting and then defaming E. Jean Carroll. This, politically speaking, is an appeals process Donald Trump does not want voters to be reminded of just as their ballots are arriving in the mail, which is what's going to happen in September. Trump knows he's losing, and he knows it's because he overturned Roe and because he's an adjudicated rapist. In the back of every single female voter's mind is the knowledge that Donald Trump is an adjudicated rapist. Some women may not be able to articulate that or realize it, but for some reason they know they don't trust Donald Trump. They can't put their finger on it, but there's something about Donald. They didn't follow the E. Jean Carroll trial. They don't pay close attention, but for some reason they can't put their finger on it. They know they can't trust Donald Trump. Even the women who have convinced themselves E. Jean Carroll is lying, even these women, way back deep down, all the way hidden in the folds of their lizard brains, they know unconsciously Donald Trump is a rapist. These women won't be able to bring themselves to vote for Kamala Harris, but a lot of them also won't be able to bring themselves to vote for Donald Trump. Elections are also won by convincing some people just to stay home. Bloody Sunday, Bloody September. That's what I'm calling next month. In late September, oral arguments begin as Trump's lawyers appeal a $500 million judgment. Remember this? Where Trump was found guilty back in February for defrauding lenders. Now, we may actually get a preliminary ruling on his appeal before Election Day. But by then it will be too late, and it will be irrelevant because he'll appeal it again. In Bloody September, as this election sets into stone, voters will be reminded that Trump is not just an adjudicated rapist. Judge Kaplan, who presided over both E. Jean Carroll trials, said that Donald Trump is an adjudicated rapist. Donald Trump, voters will be reminded, because of the $500 million fine, they will be reminded that he's also been found guilty of ripping off lenders by exaggerating his wealth. In September, voters will once again be reminded that Donald Trump's calling card, "I'm a successful businessman," that's a lie. Not good for Donald Trump in September, which is why it's going to be bloody. Voters will be reminded Trump is a convicted felon. Voters will be reminded of two civil trials, one involving sexual assault and one where he ripped off lenders, exaggerating his wealth, and of course, the criminal trial he lost in Manhattan. So right now, for Bloody September, the only opportunity Donald Trump has, the only opportunity he will have to turn this around is that very first debate between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump on September 10th. Unless the stock market collapses in September, not October, September, unless there's a massive terrorist attack in September, the only thing driving the news cycle in Trump's favor during September will be that debate on September 10th. And that's assuming he'll be able to knock it out of the park. That's his only hope, is that he knocks it out of the park and Kamala does worse than Joe Biden. Highly unlikely. This debate will be worth watching. I'm going to host another party, a watch party. For Trump, everything is riding on this, which means he will be under a lot of pressure. He generally rises to the moment in his inimitable way, but he is also capable of becoming incredibly rattled, especially by a younger, smarter, better educated, more accomplished woman who, I shouldn't say this, but it's germane, Kamala Harris happens to be attractive. Now, I know you're not allowed to say that, but this is relevant. And by the way, beauty comes from within. But go ahead, put me in the penalty box for saying she's attractive, okay? I know that's a sin. Not necessarily if you believe beauty comes from within, but I'm in the penalty box. I'm bringing this up because by Trump's standard of beauty, Kamala Harris is attractive. And that is going to rattle him on September 10th. That's what's going to make this debate worth watching. It's worth watching because Kamala has nothing to lose. All she really has to do is show up. Trump, he has to hit 3 grand slams. He's got to win this. The pressure is on him. And, when you have to sink the shot, you always miss. That's September 10th. September 11th, it's going to get, after he loses that debate or just doesn't knock her out, it's on September 11th, hate to bring up that date, September starts getting really ugly. On September 11th, Trump realizes he's all out of options. And that's why the second half of September will be bloody. The clock will be running out. It's getting way too late for him to redefine what this race is about. It's going to be too late to replace J.D. Vance. He's not going to replace him with Bobby Kennedy Jr. That was one of the rumors. He's not going to do that. It's getting way too late, right? It's already August 24th. September 10th is 3 weeks away. It's getting way too late for Donald Trump to throw some Hail Mary pass that turns the race upside down. What you will be seeing and enjoying are bodies quietly, I was going to say flying out the window. Bad. Okay. He's going to start tossing people overboard. Trump is going to shuffle campaign advisors. He's not going to fire them because firing them would be admitting defeat. But we're going to get fresh reports of new blood being brought in to breathe life into Trump's dying campaign. I don't think blood breathes life. Well, actually, blood carries oxygen. So, yes, you could say the metaphor is working. New blood to breathe life, fresh. Let me have a sip of coffee. Have you noticed I'm doing more shows? How are we doing on time? Okay. I'm going to wrap it up. I just wanted to touch on 2 more things. If you enjoyed any of this episode, please hit the like button so I remain in your feed. Subscribe to my channel. And if you really want to help, the best way is to copy and paste the link to this episode and share it with your friends. That is the only reason I have an audience, is because you, my stupid listeners, have been... Did I just call my listeners stupid? Oh. You, my beloved listeners, I can't do sincerity. You douchebags shared this show with other douchebags, and that's why this is me. This is, please share this episode, okay, D-bags? Okay, let me just wrap up here. There are a couple things I wanted. Hang on, where was that? Here it is. Okay. As you know, is this it? Yes. Trump obsesses with crowd size. By the way, a lot of you got that Obama joke. And I asked in the comments section, a lot of you picked up on Obama's joke about Trump's obsession with crowd size. And I asked for stories about your dogs, and they were beautiful and very touching. I don't know why, but somebody said they had a dog named Gary, and it just hit me. I don't know why, but naming a dog Gary is the funniest thing I've heard all week. Some guy wrote in, my dog Gary. Gary. My dog, Gary. You know what? Gary is a great name for a cat, actually. It's a better name for a cat. Gary. All right. Fred Stoller had a cat named Marvin who lived to 21. He was like 21 or 22 years old. As you know, Trump obsesses with crowd size because, I'm being serious here, it is the closest he has to a human connection. Deep down, he wants to be loved, and he's not. And that's one of the reasons he follows crowd size so closely. And the number he follows very closely is his favorability rating. This is going to get sad. You're going to actually start feeling sorry for Donald Trump right now. Now, Joe Biden's favorability rating was much lower than Trump's. Trump found comfort in that. He always thought, well, at least I'm not as unpopular as Biden. Both men, when it comes to likability, are underwater. In other words, more Americans disliked Trump and Biden than liked them. But Joe Biden was more disliked, and Trump found comfort in that. But we have some sad news for this monster, Donald Trump. This is what's eating away at his psyche. Maybe also the worm he caught from Bobby Kennedy yesterday, but what's eating away at Trump's psyche. A new Economist YouGov poll of 1,400 registered voters just came out. This is perhaps one of the most accurate surveys we have in the United States. The Economist YouGov poll. And of course, The Economist is a British magazine. We need the Brits to give us the most accurate reading of what we're thinking. But this is a new survey fresh out of the oven. Donald Trump's favorability rating is completely underwater. He is drowning. It's at -10. In other words, 45% of American voters give him a favorability rating, while 55% give him an unfavorability rating. This is very important, and I'll explain why in a second. 10% more voters dislike Trump than like him. Now, up until recently, likability was the key number in predicting the outcome of a presidential election. Around 2012, something happened. Obama was kind of underwater, and some polls showed him underwater. And it was said, well, he's going to lose to Romney because no president has ever been reelected with poll numbers like this. Well, Obama won in 2012 with pretty sour approval ratings. Since 2012, everybody's underwater, and not because of climate change. Obama, Romney, Hillary, Trump, the Supreme Court, Congress, Mitch McConnell, Mike Johnson, Nancy Pelosi, everybody is completely underwater. Biden won in 2020 because fewer people disliked him than disliked Trump, but they weren't too keen on Joe Biden. Well, we have new polling. It shows that America doesn't just dislike Trump and J.D. Vance. They hate them. They hate them. And this makes Donald Trump sad. It hurts his feelings. It really does. I think Trump is probably relieved that J.D. Vance is more hated than he is. That may be one of the reasons he picked him as vice president. But this really hurts more than crowd sizes, more than Kamala drawing bigger ratings for her convention speech than Donald's convention speech. And remember, he had just gotten shot. He survived an assassination attempt. People were tuning in to see that ear. Kamala beat him by 22 percentage points in ratings. And just so you know how despised J.D. Vance is, a new Gallup poll gives J.D. Vance a negative 17% favorability rating. In other words, 17% more people hate him than like him. He is a disaster. J.D. Vance is an absolute disaster, not just as a pick for a running mate, but as a human being. So back to that Economist YouGov poll of registered voters. Well, Donald Trump is underwater by 10 percentage points, right? What about Kamala Harris's favorability? And this almost makes me feel sorry for Trump. Her favorability rating is even. It's flat. This is phenomenal. In a country where both Trump, Vance, and Joe Biden, the Supreme Court, Nancy Pelosi, are all underwater, more people dislike them than like them. In such a climate, Harris is even. An equal number of people like her as dislike her. And Tim Walz, also even. Just as many people like Walz as dislike him. In today's climate, even 50-50, that means Harris and Walz are up there with Mother Teresa and who? Princess Di. I mean, if you actually, in this country, if you polled Mother Teresa and Princess Di, I think those are the only two people who wouldn't be underwater. So, this is likability. Favorability is likability. It is the abstract, do I like this person? It's not about issues, it's just a feeling. It is a feeling. This is what they're measuring. And Harris and Walz are doing really good, whether you like it or not. And I don't like this, but this is the fact. Presidential elections are not won on issues. I wish they were. Presidential elections are won on likability. That's the best indicator, best predictor of who's going to win an election. Do you like this person? And, you know, understandably so. Issues are very complex for most voters, including me. We are assaulted by a media that thrives on nothing but conflict, sizzle, and sound bites. Voters are not computers. I wish they were. I really do. I wish you could feed voters raw numbers on crime, inflation, unemployment, income inequality, border crossings, and then the voters would do the calculations and compute which policies make sense, which work, which don't, and then they could cast their ballots accordingly. Maybe one day maybe with, advances in artificial intelligence, we can eventually have robots voting for us. But right now, elections are not garbage in, garbage out, as they used to say in Silicon Valley. What you put in, you get out, garbage in, garbage out. So, until the robots start voting, elections still come down to trust, life story, character, and all of that is expressed in likability. America doesn't like Donald Trump, and they hate J.D. Vance. Presidential elections are won in two arenas. There is the national arena and the local arena. Because it's the Electoral College that determines who's president, the most important arena of the two is the local arena. This means it comes down to ground game, specifically in 7 swing states. That means knocking on as well as knocking down doors. That's where likability comes into play. The ground game is predicated on the likability of the candidate. People knocking on doors, working phone banks, they have to like, if not love, their candidate, because candidates need that contagion spreading to independent voters who are still on the fence. The only contagion Trump supporters can offer is COVID. Independents talking to Trump workers are not going to see what they see in the eyes of the Kamala Harris campaign workers who are knocking on doors. Trump, therefore, no matter how much money he has, how much airtime he buys, what his ad buys are, he has zero ground game. Nobody is going to work as hard for Trump as they are for Kamala Harris in Pennsylvania, in Wisconsin, in Michigan, Florida, maybe, perhaps Texas, probably Arizona and Nevada. Zero ground game. And this is why we are looking at a blue tsunami. He has no surrogates. There is no Republican analog to Bernie Sanders, Michelle Obama, Jill Biden, Hillary Clinton, Bill Clinton, Barack Obama, AOC, Doug Emhoff, Coach Walsh and his wife, plus actor Tony Goldwyn. I'm sorry. I'm sure Tony Goldwyn is a wonderful guy. I just have a problem with men who are wonderful. I don't trust anybody who doesn't call his audience douchebags. There's just something a little too wonderful about it. I'm sure he's a nice guy. I'm sure he is. It's kind of like the Jack Schlossberg phenomenon. All right. The point how are we doing on time? All right, I'm going to wrap it. Too many Americans don't like Trump and Vance, especially women. Okay? So there's the local arena, and then there's the national arena. And that hatred that we're seeing is going to be reflected in the popular vote. You don't win the presidency based on the popular vote. But the popular vote is America writ large. And Harris having a likability advantage right now opens up untold possibilities on the electoral map. This, her likability, is what helps Democrats win the House, which they're going to do, and maybe keep the Senate. Again, I don't want to go over this again. If she doesn't keep the Senate, it's not going to be nice. Okay, I'm wrapping things up. I may even do a show tomorrow because this is also interesting. Enjoy the good days. Enjoy the good weeks. Enjoy the good months. Think back to what June was like. There's lots to be grateful for. There's plenty of good news. Just to remind you, September is going to be bloody, so be prepared. Just to wrap this up, Pennsylvania, she's going to win it. It's still in play. She's going to win, again, because of her surrogates. She's got Governor Josh Shapiro, plus Senator Bob Casey of Pennsylvania, Democrat, is running for re-election, and his polling is through the roof in Pennsylvania. Who does Trump have in Pennsylvania? Who does Trump have in Pennsylvania to inject blood and sweat into the ground game? Absolutely nobody. Plus, Democrats control the Pennsylvania Supreme Court, which makes it impossible for him to steal that election. Ground game is expressed through down ballot candidates. This is why Casey, running for re-election in Pennsylvania, helps Harris. That's a really integral part of a ground game. North Carolina, to remind you, blue. Arizona and Nevada, close. Harris is going to win. Why? Because there are two Senate races in Arizona and Nevada, and both Democratic candidates, Jackie Rosen and Ruben Gallego in Arizona, just like Bob Casey in Pennsylvania, are blowing out the competition, okay? Wisconsin and Michigan, 2/3 of the blue wall, blue. The polls are great there. Plus, again, we have two Senate races in Wisconsin and Michigan. In Michigan, it's Slotkin, and in Wisconsin, it's Tammy Baldwin. These candidates, Democratic candidates, are running light years ahead of the Republican who's running against them. So that's part of the ground game, right? Those down ballot candidates are part of the ground game. Georgia, which Biden won, is tight. Georgia has 16 electoral votes, same as North Carolina. Georgia is going to be tight. This is why. Now, Trump is terrified he's about to lose Georgia, and he's now trying to make peace with the Republican governor down there, Brian Kemp, who, if you remember last week, Donald Trump turned on the Republican governor of Georgia, Brian Kemp, once again, turned on his wife last week, called her disloyal, because Kemp and his wife still refuse to say Biden lost Georgia in 2020. This week, Trump was looking at some polls and he realized I better make nice with Brian Kemp. So on Friday, he said some nice things about Brian Kemp. Here's the problem we have in Georgia. It's a difficult ground game, especially since we don't have any Senate races in Georgia this cycle to help Harris. Biden won in 2020 probably because he had those two big Senate races in Georgia. You had Raphael Warnock and Ossoff. So there's your ground game. They bring out the votes. There's no Senate race in Georgia. Harris will not be enjoying any reverse coattails in Georgia. There's no marquee race in Georgia the way there is in North Carolina between Josh Stein and the batshit crazy Republican Lieutenant Governor Mark Robinson. There's no marquee race in Georgia to bring out the vote. Plus, Brian Kemp, the governor, spent 6 years scrubbing black people from the voting rolls, while at the same time making it incredibly hard for black people to cast their ballot in Georgia. So Georgia is going to be tough for Kamala Harris. The polls I'm looking at still show Ohio out of reach, but Sherrod Brown, the Democratic senator from Ohio, is looking at a very strong win there. We have good news coming out of 538. It's the most respected election modeler in America. 538 now says after running 1,000 simulations, they do this every day. They run 1,000 simulations every day. They run simulations of possible election outcomes. They now put Kamala Harris's chances of becoming the next president at 58 out of 100. Out of every 100 scenarios, 58 out of every 100 simulations show Kamala Harris beating Trump. It was not like that a month ago for her or for Joe Biden 5 weeks ago. There's a lot of good news and momentum, okay? But here especially, this could wait till tomorrow. How are we doing? All right. This is why I think this has the markings of a once-in-a-generation landslide that rewrites the entire electoral map and opens up new possibilities in the race for Senate. Women. Trump knows it. Trump knows this election will be decided by women, and women hate him, and he knows it. Women are furious with him for appointing those 3 justices who overturned Roe. He's known this since December of last year. Since the beginning of this election cycle, Trump has been attempting to distance himself from the pro-life movement, and it backfired. It's backfiring. He is demanding gratitude from the pro-life movement because Roe got overturned. He's called the Dobbs decision a beautiful thing. It's not working, and Trump knows this. In a desperate attempt to stanch the bleeding of white female voters in key battleground states, those are the only women who like Donald Trump. Stupid white women. Trump this week, he's losing white women. To stanch the bleeding this week, he began saying, quote, I could not believe, I read this and I said, he didn't say that. He said this. He said, quote, my administration will be great for women and reproductive rights. He says his administration will be great for reproductive rights. This is an act of desperation. And it's self-sabotage politically, and it's blowing up in his face. On Friday, it is, when he said, my administration will be great for reproductive rights is a dog whistle. Trump's base knows exactly what reproductive rights means. Just doesn't mean he supports abortion, okay? But that's partly what it means, okay? He's just come out in favor of abortion by saying this. I support reproductive rights. On Thursday, he said Chicago cops should take guns away on the street from criminals. I hope Harris is cutting that and using it against him. Well, now he's saying he supports reproductive rights for women. He should have just said, I support reproductive rights for men. But no, he said for women. This is the dog whistle, reproductive rights. There's a whole suite of issues that come with reproductive rights, like contraception, which the hard right, I know this is hard to believe, they are targeting contraception, and they want to eliminate no-fault divorce. People like J.D. Vance have repeatedly said no-fault divorce may be great for women. I'm laughing at the stupidity, okay? J.D. Vance said, while no default divorce may be great for women in violent marriages, it's horrible for the families they leave behind. In other words, reproductive freedom also means women are free to leave violent marriages, which J.D. Vance has repeatedly implied when women are allowed to leave violent marriages, it's bad for the children. Got it? These people, and I use the word generously, people, J.D. Vance and his people believe that when a mother leaves a violent marriage, it's bad for the family unit. Now, most of my listeners, or at least I, just think it's a put on. I mean, this is something I would say when I was younger to my parents at dinner just to get a rise out of them, but he means it. When it comes to abortion, when it comes to embracing the pro-life movement, Donald Trump has painted himself into an impossible corner, and it is blowing up in his face going into bloody September. Philip Klein is the editor of the National Review. The National Review is a right-wing bastion for paleoconservative thought. Philip Klein, the editor of the National Review, is now openly complaining that Donald Trump is reclaiming his pro-choice Manhattan roots. Klein, editor of the National Review, this is Bill Buckley's old job. Klein eviscerated Trump on Friday for saying publicly that Florida's heartbeat bill that prohibits abortion after 6 weeks is, quote unquote, too harsh. Trump is trying to thread a needle, but it's poking him in the eye. He's trying to figure out, he can't. He cannot court the female vote without alienating the National Review and the religious right. He is in an impossible situation, and he knows this. He knows the pond he's fishing in is way too shallow to win this election. There are not enough votes to be had. Trump knows he's running a national campaign. He's not representing some deep red congressional district in some shithole state like Alabama, rural Alabama. People in in the cities are great. But you go to these shithole red congressional districts, these people believe late-term abortion is an actual thing. It's not. He's not in a deep red state. He has to run statewide. He has to win votes in the cities of Alabama, in Georgia, Mississippi. He has to run nationwide, and the latest numbers show overwhelmingly that reproductive freedom is a winning message. That's why he said And he keeps saying, my administration will be great for women and reproductive rights, because he lives and dies by the polls. More than 63% of Americans, according to the latest Pew Research, 63% of Americans think abortion, not reproductive freedom. Reproductive freedom, in many ways, is a euphemism for abortion, a kind of couch. Abortion, a lot of times people didn't like to say the word abortion. 63% of Americans think abortion should be legal in most cases. So he's wisely dipping his rod and reel. I don't fish, but he's in Kamala's pond. But it's too late. Democratic voters, especially women and more white women, are not biting. And by fishing in Kamala's pond, Trump has alienated his evangelical base. Now, they will never, ever, the evangelical base, the people who put Trump in office back in 2016, they are never going to vote for Harris. But they just might stay home on Election Day. Now, deep down, everybody knows Trump is pro-choice. Well, he's pro-Trump, but he's also pro-choice. According to several of her friends, Ivanka Trump, his daughter, had at least one abortion while she was a teenager. So there's simply no way Donald didn't know about that. He got into bed in 2016 with the pro-life movement. And just like when he got into bed with Stormy Daniels, he didn't wear a condom. But this time, he contracted a disease. When he got into bed with the pro-life movement, he had no idea how insane these people are. They are insatiable. He had no idea that they believe overturning Roe was just the first step in a long road towards outlawing abortion in all 50 states. Why do they? Because they believe abortion is murder. They genuinely believe abortion is murder. Some of them believe condoms and the sponge and the IUD are also murder. As I said at the top of the show, there's a lot of mental illness and unresolved trauma in this country. So they're not saying women's reproductive freedom the way Donald Trump now wants them to see it. He wants them to see reproductive freedom and abortion as a states' rights issue, because that was once a winning message. States' rights was a winning message for racists like Donald Trump's father, who didn't want to change the Jim Crow South. So instead of saying the N-word, they said states' rights. These pro-lifers who Trump owes everything to politically, they genuinely see abortion as the murder of what they call the preborn, right? The preborn. And they want to literally police not just our bedrooms, but a woman's body, all of it. And a lot of them, especially this week, the editor of the National Review, a lot of them are waking up and realizing that just like anybody else who gets too close to Donald Trump, they too have been completely conned. They are now realizing that he's not all in with the pro-life movement, and a lot of these people are going to stay home on Election Day. That means Donald Trump will have destroyed the Republican Party. Will have destroyed it. So there are several things to look forward to in November. First, President Harris. Second, Trump's self-immolation that is going to go on for at least 3 more years. I don't know if he goes to prison, and because I like to watch Rudy, defile himself in public, you put them in prison. I mean, they belong there, but then the show's over. You don't get to see. Does anybody think Trump is going to go to prison? I do see desperate attempts by Donald Trump to cling to power within the GOP. And this is going to be so sweet to watch. Who among these Republican cowards will be brave enough to shake Donald Trump loose after Election Day? Now, he'll be 82 during the next presidential election. It's generally assumed that this is his last hurrah. But he can't let go. So for me, what I'm looking forward to, this is why I'm working out. I want to really, this is going to be fun. You want to be around for this. The real fun will be watching the entire Republican Party twisting themselves into knots after Election Day, trying to save themselves from both Trump and the wrath of the American people. Will there be a Truth and Reconciliation within the Republican Party? No. Trump will still have a hold over the Republican Party. He cannot go away. Enjoy. There's a lot to look forward to. I'm David Feldman, reminding you to stay strong and protect the weak. If you enjoyed any of this nonsense, please share it with your friends. That is the best way to help me. And if you would like a free transcript of today's episode, go to shopdavidfeldman.com. All those transcripts are free. We're 2 behind. We're going to do the transcripts tomorrow. But they're all free thanks to the D-bags. My listeners who, I don't trust anybody who doesn't call his audience a bunch of D-bags, which is why I am where I am, begging people to buy my Still a Democrat coffee mug, my favorite, the Made in Los Estados Unidos coffee mug, the Albert Einstein mug, where he says I'm surrounded by idiots, and the mug with my worst case scenario map. This is, I think, a nice souvenir. It's the map I built showing that no matter what happens, Kamala Harris will get to 270, and 270 is all she needs to become our next president. If you want to hurt me and remind me that I'm not who I think I am, go ahead and buy the I Hope You're in the Mood for Diarrhea chef's apron. That's if you really just want to remind me that I'm not who I aspire to be, go ahead and buy the I Hope You're in the Mood for Diarrhea chef's apron. Thank you to Bob in the chat room. I read all your comments. If you want to tell me the name of your dog, I think Gary wins. Naming your dog Gary is one of the funniest. I think a cat named Gary is funnier. All right. Thank you very much. I will try to do a show tomorrow night. Bye. Thank you.